Fred Shasta, Chelsea.
Made a lot of points.
I know, it's warm out. I'm hard. It's been a while. It's fun.
I'm glad you texted me. All the friends.
I wore one.
A girlfriend I just texted me.
This thing was closed on this thing. Okay, can I help with it?
And then he'll text me. Yeah, he's right. You're supposed to say. It's the rhymes. I was just saying over there. No, change my days. See his my brother, my great brother. charger, so it'll be comfortable for yeah. Perfect.
How are you? What's going on? Glad you guys are here.
This is my best friend.
about to begin the service. Could I ask everyone with a cell phone to please put it in the silent mode at this time? Donald was a proud member of the U.S. Navy. Bobby told me that although he was in the Navy, he couldn't swim. So they put him on fire detail, figuring he would be the last person to want to leave the ship. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have the U.S. Army provide the proper honors to him. If you're in a wheelchair, please remain seated, but everyone else, when they go ahead and they play taps, please feel free to rise and place your hand over your heart.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's truly an honor for the United States Navy to be here to help commemorate the life of our shipmate, Mr. Benjamin. As a part of military honors, as the gentleman said, we'll initially play taps and then we'll ceremoniously fold the flag. For those who have previously served, please join us in one final salute during rendering the taps. You may be seated.
funeral will be conducted by Rabbi Benay Lapin.
The Jewish people respond to death with 3 words of blessing. In English, the words mean praised be the judge of truth. So we're going to begin our service today in the traditional manner with the wisdom of the tradition. Please repeat after me. Baruch Dayan HaEmet. Praised is the judge of truth. Adonai Natan Va'adonai Lakach. Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. God has given and God has taken. Praise be the name of God. Lakol zman ve'et lechol chafetz tachat hashamayim. Et laledet ve'et lamut. Et la'ata'at ve'et la'akor natua. Et lifrot ve'et livnot. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which has been planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search for what is lost and a time to abandon that search, a time to preserve and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Adonai roi lo echsar, Yinodeshe yarmitzeni, al me menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yishovev, yancheni b'ma'arei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech begetz al mavet, lo irara, ki ata imadi. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He who knows not, and knows not that he knows not, is a fool. Ignore him. He who knows not, and knows that he knows not, is a child. Teach him. He who knows and knows not that he knows is asleep. Wake him. But he who knows and knows he knows is wise. Follow him. Okay, 20 questions. Who said those words? When and to whom? This is the audience participation part. Anyone remember? You've got to be at least 55 years old to remember. Barbara? Yes? Who's bar mitzvah? It was Murray's bar mitzvah, and who spoke those words? Of course, it was Uncle Donald. Uncle Donald quoted the words of Confucius with a knowing nod of humor in his voice for their tongue-twisting poetry 55 years ago to Murray in his toast to him on his bar mitzvah. It was his charge to Murray that he should be someone who knows, and who knows he knows. I was 7 years old, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Probably because he who knows and knows he knows became a kind of mantra in our family. From that day onward, pretty much any mention of the words he knows in any sentence, in any context in my home, would prompt us to break into laughter and a boisterous chorus of, but he who knows and knows he knows. After which we would all laugh and swim in the love, Uncle Donald's love, for us and our love for him. But what was it that Uncle Donald was saying that it was so important to know, and to know you know? What is it that makes us truly wise? After 55 years, I think I know now. As I was sitting and reflecting on Uncle Donald's life and the words I would say today, I think I understood it for the first time. But before I share my conclusion with you, I'm going to pause and share the mic with so many of you who said, I want to speak. I've been a rabbi for 25 years now, and I want to tell you that I've done a lot of funerals, and never once in those 25 years have so many people come up to me and said, I want to speak. So I'd like to call up Bobby first.
I need my glasses here. So, first, I want to thank all of you for coming As I tried to collect my thoughts and my memories, I struggled on what to say today. I was blessed to share 62 years of his life, and what a wonderful ride it has been. My dad had various roles. He was a savvy businessman and worked diligently to provide for his family. He was a veteran and served in the Navy. Dad was a Shriner in Medina Temple and participated in community services and charitable causes. He was a friend and a companion, and mostly, he was a family man. A son, a brother, a husband, a father, a grandfather, and an uncle. While he excelled at all these roles, his greatest success was the love for his family and his ability to make sure that we always felt loved and valued. Dad and I frequently talked about the importance of family. He loved that I had 3 children. It reminded him of his own upbringing. With smiles in his eyes and gleaming, he would say, "I hope they will be as close as Burton, Gloria, and I." Many of his fondest memories were times they spent together from childhood throughout their lives, enjoying each other's company and that of their spouses, Sheila and Leonard. Family was the foundation of Dad's life, and over the years, his family grew through his marriage to Marcia and her children, Hal and Paula. With Hal's marriage to Kathy and my own marriage, my father was blessed with 6 grandchildren who he treasured. Although he wasn't a sports fan, he was thrilled to attend hockey, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, and wrestling events, as well as other activities throughout the years. He cherished every moment he could spend with us and constantly embraced us with his love and support. My father made us strong and stood by us in times of weakness. He was my Superman, always coming to my rescue during difficult or painful times. He did his best to protect me and buffer me from my every disappointment. After a tearful conversation he and I shared while I was in college after a breakup, Dad flew out to Arizona to comfort me. It seemed like only minutes after we hung up the phone that Dad called back with his flight information for later that evening. There was never any hesitation. He would move mountains if he could to protect and shield me from disappointment or harm, and he never left me to find my way on my own. He was my strength, and even today, on this most difficult of days, I feel him by my side. Dad shared his stories and life lessons with all of us. He encouraged us to pursue our dreams and live life to the fullest. He enjoyed simple pleasures like eating chocolate, driving with the top down in his convertible, spending time on his boat, cooking French toast, or baking brownies and playing with Benny. While he was a well-traveled man, his greatest pleasure was to be close to family. Dad was not a complainer. I would always ask how he was doing, and his answer was always the same. Can't complain, it does no good. Even in his most difficult days, Dad faced his situation with courage, strength, and gratitude. My dad has been a role model for myself and my children, and I see many of his traits in us. We will always treasure him and keep his memory alive in our hearts. My father said that there are 3 things in life a man needs: a comfortable chair, a big screen TV, and family. And I hope as we sit here today and honor his life and honor him, I hope Dad here in the comfiest recliner, watching a cowboy movie on the big screen, and that you can feel the depth of our love for you. Thank you.
Tom, I'm here today to review with you the wonderful journey we had for 91 years. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. But it was perfect. And everyone who knows the word perfect means the best. And you were the best. One of the big reasons Donald was so successful, he listened to people. And when I was activated into the Army, I said, Donald, you don't want to go to Korea and be in the infantry. I want you to enlist in the Navy. He called me up the next morning. He said, I'm in the Navy. That made me so happy. We did a lot of things together in a review of this journey. And we would do things in such a way that only two brothers could do it with pleasure and enjoyment. And everybody knows 7 days there are in a week. But every Friday for years, we would go to Max's at 10:30. Why? Because at 11 o'clock they changed the menu. And we would order the Skokie. That was the name of a Vale and Locks place. And Donald was a big tipper. And those waitresses know that if there wasn't a new green pickle on the table, it would go back. And he kind of walked around the table because if that cup was empty, they knew what would happen. But it filled every time with alcohol. But it wasn't because of the meal we went there. We went there because we wanted to be together and talk about the week. I can tell you, the first thing we would talk about was politics. We love to talk about politics. And although we may not have agreed, it was part of the breakfast. The second, we talked about our family, our kids, what we were going to do, and how we could help each other. But the most important thing was, we talked about investments, stocks, and what's going on with the big trade markets. And I listened to Donald because he was a smart man. You don't become an executive vice president in a big bank without the knowledge that he had. We're all kind of sorry that Gloria's not here today. But she's somewhere in the world because she saw him just before he left. And as we were getting a little older, and not as healthy as we were, Lori would bring us food in our house every Saturday morning. And she'd drive up to my house and do the same thing. And it wasn't a little bit of nothing, it was for 3 meals, something special. Whether it was a potato pancakes or both, but Gloria was famous for her mango bread. And when it came, you were kind of anxious because every week it was different. Gloria knew how to take care of any situation that came up. We could always talk to Gloria. If there was a triangle, Donald would be in one corner, I would be in the other, and Gloria would be on top. Because she knew what to do, what to say, and when to say it. We were a wonderful team. We were champions for 91 years. We got together on all kinds of occasions and weddings and bar mitzvahs. We couldn't find enough ways and times to get together. Now, I am trying to think that oh yeah, yeah. On our wonderful experience on this journey, driving down the highway, I says, Donald, there's an arrow that says hospital. And we went that way because I felt in the house was a very serious life-threatening condition. And was rushed to the hospital and given him oxygen. And I was in the hospital for 12 days, and you don't stay today in the hospital for 12 days unless there's something wrong. But when I was in that hospital, I was thinking every day now, I wanted to be with you. And I think God heard me. Because when I was discharged, they said they never saw a person with my condition leave the hospital so soon. But I did. And it was on a Wednesday that I came to visit. And I didn't tell Eliza because I didn't know what day, what time I would be able to have enough strength to get out of the car to see you. But I did. that dog with you everywhere. You're inseparable from that dog. And Eliza told me, that dog is in the bed every night. He was like a watchdog. And for those who visited Donald, knew one thing. You never put your hand on his head because he would growl, he would come after you, and you couldn't pull your hand down fast enough. So I says, Eliza, pull Donald's hand out the bed. I want to hold it. And I said, I'm going to try something, because I like to experiment. I would count 1, 2, 3, and I was squeezing his hand. And I said, Donald, please squeeze my hand so I can feel it. And God was listening to me, he did. I could not believe it. It was a miracle. And I'm from Missouri, Shawnee State. So I says, I'm going to do it a different way now and see if it works. So I went through the 1, 2, 3, and I says, Donald, I did not feel your hand. I want you to really squeeze her. He hugged me. I said, Donald, leave it over. You're squeezing too hard. And while I was looking at him, he was trying to talk to me and say the numbers. So that day, set out, and in a few minutes, made a journey through life wonderful. Donald, I'm going to miss you, but I
and Sheila asked me to read the following words. Donald was a wonderful, caring person. He cared about his family. He cared about his friends. He cared about his caregivers. And he cared about his dog. We will miss him. God bless him. God rest his soul. Amen.
Joseph Campbell wrote in The Power of the Myth that every child needs a guide, someone to take them from their father and guide them to be the adult that they were meant to be. In the hero's journey, Uncle Donald was my guide. In so many ways, I modeled my life on the hero he was and how he lived. He rode in on a white Harley-Davidson motorcycle. He lived on a yacht in Burnham Harbor, drove an Eldorado convertible. He showed up every Sunday with Bobby to take us to the Shriners Circus and the zoo and Kittyland. And we go in his boat and stop on the way home for smoked fish and lox, and we told everyone that we caught it from the boat. He was a dreamer. He was a rebel. He had a bit of Hollywood in him. He was handsome. He was classy. He loved life, and he lived life to the fullest. He went through an entrepreneurial period where he bought a bakery and a Burger King and a metal smelting factory. And like all of us, he wanted to be important. But he was important. He was important to me and everyone who knew him. He was a mensch. As I grew older, we talked often. He was my friend. We talked about girls and relationships, family issues in school, business, and sometimes just nothing, just to check in. But whenever we were together, it was special. It was important to us. And his love for my mom meant so much to her, and they spoke every day for most of his life. And when we were done, he would say, "I love you," and I'd say it back. And I knew I was loved, and so did he.
I'd like to speak on behalf of my mom. She loved little words lately. When I mentioned Don's passing, she kept repeating, "He's such a wonderful man. He's such a wonderful man. He's such a wonderful man." And then, "I loved him so much. I loved him so much. I loved him so much." Kath and I will continue to support and comfort my mother because I know for sure that Donna would expect that. And nothing less. In Don's final months and weeks, he would ask how my mom was doing when he was able. And he always, when he opened his eyes, he would want to tell me to make sure that my mom was okay. And that I always took care of Mush. we were very similar in the fact that when we met, neither he was gonna try to impress me and I wasn't gonna try to impress him. And we were gonna have to earn each other's respect. And time was only gonna indicate whether that was gonna be true or not. Months and years passed, and I think we've earned each other's respect. And I saw how Don loved and respected my mom, which was really terrific. But I also witnessed how he loved his family, Bobby, his parents at the time, his nieces, nephews, and siblings. It was really, really terrific for me to see. I felt that Donald would be a great role model to my family, if I was going to have one. Years later, I was fortunate enough to marry my wife, Kathy, and have 3 boys that Donald adored, and my boys deeply loved their Pop-Pop. Pop-Pop was their only grandfather, as my dad passed away at an early age. And Kathy's father passed away when the boys were very young. My sons loved and adored Papa very much, and loved to talk to him about his life and his history, which Marie told you how great that was, and my kids would hold on to every single word that he spoke in awe and respect. The biggest lesson that Donald Papa left to us was the gift of the significance of family. And for me personally, that was the greatest gift bestowed upon Kathy and I, and Jamie, Jeffrey, and Matthew. He was not only supportive of myself and my family, but my late sister, who he also loved and adored. And helped in every way that he possibly could. I want to thank, in closing, his wonderful caregivers, because some of them aren't here, one of them is. I want to thank Alan, Boone, Tony, Sherry, most recently, and of course, the godson, Eliza.
Bernie, I too I was scared to death of that dog. I love that you mentioned that.
He said he was also scared of the dog. It's great you mentioned it. I'll tell you later.
So with apologies to those who have heard this before, let me tell you about the very first time I met Don Benjamin. This is a completely true story. I met Barbara on our very first day of school at Northern, after each of our parents had dropped us off. For both of us, it was love at first sight. While we both came home for Labor Day weekend, the first time I met Barb's family was when we came in for Rosh Hashanah. And after being introduced to Uncle Don, this man who I had never laid eyes on before, took me aside looked me in the eyes, and told me that if I ever laid a hand on his niece, he would have both of my kneecaps broken. And he walked away. That is a true story. And what followed was 48 years of being treated by Don more like a son than a nephew-in-law. And while I never did find out if he was serious or joking when he threatened my kneecaps, what I did learn from that first encounter was a lesson that Don taught me and taught all of us for the rest of our life. That nothing is more important than family. Like many of you, I assume, Barb and I love to watch travel shows that feature the foods and cultures from all over the world. I am always amused when you inevitably and almost on cue hear a person from some faraway land say with great certainty that what makes their culture unique is their emphasis on family, as if there is a culture somewhere, anywhere in the world, where family is meaningless. So it is one thing to say that family is important, and it is another to walk the walk. And Don Benjamin walked that walk. There was nothing that he would not do for family. And by living his life that way, I can safely say that he was not just an inspiration to all of us, lucky enough to be his family, but also an amazing role model. I have often wondered if Don ever secretly wished that his niece had married, shall we say, a more competent or self-sufficient guy. Because I leaned on Don early and often, and he never let me down, always showing me by example what it means to be loyal to your family. When I finished law school and began my legal career as an assistant state's attorney, I loved that job. But with Barb, a stay-at-home mom, and by the way, I still remember my salary, the exact number, in fact, $682 every 2 weeks, and it was just not cutting it. So I left the state's attorney with no job and no money in the bank. But I did have an ace in the hole. I had Don Benjamin. And to this day, I can remember him sitting down with me in a meeting with a Yellow Pages representative and negotiating for me the price of a large legal advertising back in the days when this was the only way for an attorney to advertise. He paid for that ad because I had no money, and he became my partner in this fledgling law enterprise. A job and cost that he wanted like a hole in the head. But he never hesitated, and he never made me feel less than. He wanted me to land on my feet, and he would do what it took to make that happen. And it is important to keep in mind that I was married to his niece at this point for only a few years. Likewise, I am sure that Uncle Don must have absolutely cringed when he saw that I transferred gleefully all of my accounts to Lakeside Bank when he started there. But for the decades that he worked there, not once did he fail to be there for Barb and myself in every conceivable way. Likewise, well before I entered the scene, Uncle Don was a constant fixture in the life of my wife and I, who was a constant fixture in the life of my wife, who recalls, as Murray said, that there was virtually never a Sunday with a Door County fishery bag in tow when Don and Bobby were not with them all day, whether it be on his boat or some other activity that all the kids happily joined in. But the point is, Don was there for everyone in his family and in every conceivable way. And I am certain that I do not even know a fraction of what he did. But I do know that when he bought his currency exchanges, he did so because he could establish a business that would sustain Bobby's family. And it did. I also know that he was incredibly devoted to Hal and Kathy's family, bragging about them to us constantly, and endlessly supportive and proud of all of them. Don was a loyal and devoted husband to Marcia, and together they traveled the world together and shared so many common interests, which their backyard art and home decor can readily attest to. And even though this is a common theme today, I can't emphasize enough that Don's devotion to Gloria and Burton was a thing to behold. I know that I speak for all of us here today when I say that from that first day when my kneecaps were threatened, I have been in absolute, unmitigated awe of their devotion to one another. Again, all of us love our brothers and sisters, and when asked, all of us would say that they are important to us. But Don, well, he took it to another level. He walked the walk. It was complete and utter, total devotion to one another, totally enmeshed in each other's lives. If he was not physically at Gloria's house or Burton's house, I could always count on the phone ringing with Don checking in. Gloria and Leonard's friends were Donald and Marcia's friends. They traveled together, they socialized together constantly, they owned homes in Acapulco together, they gourmet clubbed together. There was not a single family event, no matter how trivial in the 45 years that I have been around, that Don would not be at. I am sure that all of my kids' birthday parties must have been sheer torture for him. But he never missed a one. Uncle Don was incredibly good to Barbara and I. He was a loyal and devoted friend, and Uncle and our lives were immeasurably enriched because of it. But the thing is, we were not unique. If you were lucky enough to be related to Don Benjamin, or someone he considered to be a close friend, he would be at your side through thick and thin. I think I speak for all of us here today when I say that Don has left us all with an incredible legacy of love and of giving. A legacy of having been a living, breathing example of what it means to be family. You can rest in peace, Don. You were a good man.
Dear friends and family, today we gather to mourn the loss of a wonderful man, a loving father and grandfather, and a dear friend to many of us. My grandfather was a man who lived a full and rich life and was loved by so many. He was an inspiration to all of us, and I'm honored to stand here today to pay tribute to the life of this remarkable individual. Growing up, my grandfather was a constant presence in my life. He was the foundation of our family that was there to offer love and support whenever it was needed. His unwavering commitment to his family and his love for life inspired me to be the man I am today. His smile and laughter were contagious, and he had a way of making everyone feel special and loved. My grandfather's love for his family was unmatched. He always put his family first and was always there to offer a helping hand. He taught me the importance of family, and his values and beliefs will remain with me always. And who could forget the apple pancakes? My grandfather was known for his delicious breakfast treats, and I will never forget the joy I felt sitting at the kitchen table, enjoying his favorite meal and hearing his stories. I'd give anything to have one more chance to sit and share a meal with him, to hear his laughter and feel his love one more time. My grandfather was a truly remarkable individual who touched the lives of so many people. He was a man of great strength, wisdom, and love, and his legacy will live on in the hearts of all who knew him. As we say goodbye to this incredible man, we hold on to the memories and love that he brought into our lives, and I am grateful for the time I had with him. Rest in peace, Grandpa. You will be deeply missed, but never forgotten.
I don't know how I could top that speech, but how about thank you guys all for being here. This man did everything for anyone. It didn't matter who they were. If you met him once, if you met him twice. When Pop-Up walked into anywhere, people knew who he was. When Pop-Up spoke, people listened. My favorite thing ever is when we started talking about stocks and investing. Papa Joe, you do an amazing job too. I love you very much. From that day on, it's just something I've run with my whole life, and it's something that I aspire to be, is Papa. Someone, family, Sammy Jack, my mom, the greatest gift on earth that he could ever give me. Taught me everything, and everyone for being here. Thank you guys. Love you all. Thank you.
Everyone knows I was Pop Pop's special girl. Being his only granddaughter made a special connection. He always brought up how similar the dynamic of my brothers and I was to him and his two siblings, an everlasting bond like no other. Pop Pop always encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. While my mother would have panic attacks about my travels and endeavors, Pop Pop was always excited for my next adventure. Whether it was a new job opportunity, an overseas trip, or starting my own business, his face would light up like a star hearing about what I had going on. He was my #1 fan. I know he'll always be rooting for me with every move and be in my corner forever. Pop-Pop always lived in the moment. He traveled to the places he wanted to see, ate the foods he wanted to eat, and spent the time with the people who he loved most, his family. Nothing brought him more joy than being surrounded by his loved ones and taking care of a beautiful family he created. He taught me the value of quality time and spending with people who bring you continuous laughter and joy, even if there is a bit of craziness here and there. I will miss splitting our freshly made apple pancakes and listening to all your stories. They were always well spoken and had a purpose behind it. I will miss baking brownies with extra almond extract and vanilla for you. I will miss our Friday morning rituals with Eliza, drinking our hot chocolate, and going over my repetitive weekly updates that you were always over the moon to hear about. You taught me so much and have shaped me into the person I am today and love so much. I love you forever, and I will see you again.
So, mensch literally means a person, a human being, but the broader meaning is a human being with class, with feelings, and with a sense of humanity. In other words, a mensch is a gentleman. If you ask someone for a loan and he turns you down, the man's a schmuck. Who needs him? But if he lends you the money right away, this is a mensch. He should live a long life. This is the definition of a mensch, according to How to Talk Jewish, that I found back there. And my pop-up was just that. He was the most loyal, the most giving, and the most caring person that you could ever meet. Until his dying day, it was always a, how are you doing? And a, thank you for coming. Always appreciating people being there for him. Just how he was always there for us. A true mensch. Spending time with Pop-Up was always a highlight of any week. This included going fishing with Pop-Up, smoking cigars in the backyard, and going out to dinner. Going out to dinner was his preferred activity of choice. A T-bone steak and an ice cream for dessert. Or if it was breakfast, it was an apple pancake at Walker Brothers. If the service was good, there was a much better than expected tip. A true mensch. And no matter what it was, he was always there for each one of his grandkids. Birthday parties, sports games, school events. A distinct memory I have as a kid is waking up all foggy from a hernia surgery as a scared 10-year-old with Pop-Up holding my hand next to me. And as I wake up from the fog, I hear him whisper in my ear, "Don't worry, kid, I get one of these every other week." as you could probably guess, that put me at ease. He knew just what to say. A true mensch. He was the only grandpa that my brothers and I ever knew, and he was the best grandpa that I could have ever asked for. I'll always remember sleeping in my grandparents' house growing up, waking up in the morning, and waiting for my grandpa to wake up to play Lincoln Logs and watch cartoons on a Saturday morning. A lot of kids growing up played catch with their grandpas, played basketball in the driveway maybe, but my game of choice was always trying to get Papa to tell us as many stories as possible. They were few and far between, but when he let them out, they were like a movie script. He was more interesting than the Dos Equis man. Did you know that my grandpa used to own a motel that where the Rock and Roll McDonald's sits on? Or, you probably know now, that he served in the Navy, but he couldn't swim. He would spend countless time and countless money on his favorite charity, the Shriners. He was a true mensch. And as I got older, I found myself wanting to be more and more like my grandpa. Not many people work from home in their 70s and wake up at 5 a.m. every day to do it. I admire his dry sense of humor, his work ethic, and as everybody else has said, how much he loved and took pride in his family. There's nothing thicker than blood, and I'm the luckiest grandson in the world to be able to come into his bloodline. These are things that I will carry on with me the rest of my life, in ways that I'll honor my grandpa's legacy, while trying to be half the match that my grandpa was. Pop-Up, I love you, and I thank you for being the best grandpa my brothers, cousins, that I could have asked for.
What an amazing tribute to an amazing man. Do I have time for one more? Yeah. Thank you. I want to tell you a little bit about my uncle. He was born on March 19, 1932, nearly 91 years ago, just a year after Uncle Burton and a year before my mom, who we always called Gloria. They lived on High School Drive in Brentwood in St. Louis, in a little bungalow with a big white wagon wheel out front and a tree swing that my Grandpa Joe had built. Uncle Donald's love of dogs began as a child. They always had a dog, first a chow named Ching. Okay, sticky on that, but. And an Airedale or a terrier of some sort that they called Lady. Grandpa Joe worked at the filling station that great-grandpa Ben had set him up in. And Grandma Molly stayed home and took care of the kids. Times were tough during the war, but everyone pitched in. Burton and Donald had paper routes. They planted a victory garden and kept chickens for eggs. My favorite story from their childhood is one that Grandma Molly used to tell. That when everything was rationed during the war, butter, sugar, even shoes, Uncle Donald, now Uncle Bert, you can tell me if it was you that did this or Uncle Donald, but I think it was Uncle Donald who stuck the pitchfork in his shoe. Is that right? Oh, that was you. Okay. Okay. And Grandma was more concerned about the shoes than your toe, even going to the hospital. Okay. Gloria and Donald and Burton were inseparable. Gloria and Donald were always close, and that never changed in 90 years. They spoke or saw each other every day of their lives. As kids, my mom and Uncle Donald would pretend to be Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and my mom tells the story that he would dance with her in the basement, swing her around, and once swung her just a little too close and in fact banged her head against the pillar in the basement. inseparable, the three of them. Their Friday morning breakfast continued until just recently. They traveled together, vacationed together, fixed each other up on dates. Uncle Donald eventually lived around the corner from us, and Uncle Burton just a few blocks away. When we were kids, we celebrated every holiday together. We sat in the same row in shul, and Uncle Donald told the same joke walking to shul on Yom Kippur that we had to stop for a ham sandwich. After the war, Grandma and Grandpa packed up the family and moved from St. Louis to Chicago, where Grandpa became a plumber, and the kids went to high school. Uncle Donald graduated from Senn High School in 1948, and the 1950 census says that he was a produce clerk at Kroger's. When the Korean War began, Uncle Donald enlisted in the Navy, and you've heard the story. He couldn't swim, but Pat told me just the other night, Pat, whom Uncle Donald loved so much, identical twins, he used to call you, that it was one of his buddies who got him through the swim test and allowed him to enter the Navy and be inducted as a fireman. After the war, he went to college for just a semester or so at Navy Pier. He wasn't much of a student, and he soon left, and he ended up at Kroger's again. After that, he made his way to Winter and Hirsch, a credit and collection agency, doing skip tracing. That means finding people who owe money and are trying to hide out and not pay their bills. He got my father a job there as well. In 1963 or 64, one day while at Winter and Hirsch, a disgruntled debtor broke into the office with a gun, threatening to kill everyone in the place. He eventually took Uncle Donald and two secretaries hostage. The police surrounded the building, and the armed standoff was broadcast live on the 6 o'clock news. Uncle Donald calmly talked to the man, urging him not to go through it, to think of his family. He convinced him to let the secretaries go, but to keep him. Eventually, he was able to wrestle the gun from the man, and no one was hurt. His courage and compassion saved everyone's lives that day. Uncle Donald was a Shriner, as you've heard, and he rose to the highest ranks, to the office of potentate, a word I always thought was a very funny word. But he was a potentate, and he rode a giant Harley-Davidson during parades and events. He'd stop by our house, and we'd all line up to take a ride on the back of his motorcycle. We just thought he was the coolest thing, because he was. His motorcycle accident is seared in my memory as probably the first trauma of my young life. He was seriously injured and ended up in a body cast for the better part of a year. I remember visiting him in St. Francis Hospital as I was leaving. I had just broken my arm. I was in the hospital leaving, and I'll never forget him in that body cast with pulleys and cables. He was in complete traction. He was in that hospital bed in the middle of your living room for months after. That accident left him with a limp and aches and pains for the rest of his life, but I don't remember him complaining once. That experience, I think, left him with a healthy respect for life and a more sober relationship to risk. And so when I was in college and I was excited about skydiving, and I had just completed my skydiving course, I made the mistake of calling him up and telling him that I was days away from making that first jump. Suffice it to say, I had to eventually agree with him that no, the thrill was not, in fact, worth risking my life for, and thankfully I never took that jump. Uncle Donald had a way of giving you advice which if it had been your mother or your father giving it to you, you wouldn't have listened. But from him, we listened. We trusted him, and we followed his advice. Uncle Donald was always there for us, always taking care of us, figuring out what we needed and making sure we got it. He was kind, gentle, sweet, loving, but also ambitious, street smart, and determined to succeed, and he did. He eventually became vice president of Lakeside Bank, where he was respected and in charge of their loan division for decades. So, loans. I don't think it was an accident that Uncle Donald specialized in loans. He was making loans for most of his adult life. Helping people have what they needed wasn't just what he did for us, for the ones he loved. It was what he did in the world. It was his life's work. Literally, his job was giving people loans. I mean, think about that. Helping them take care of their families and not need charity. Rambam says that's the highest level of tzedakah that there is. I remember Uncle Donald telling me stories about bank customers. He drove for hours to see them, people who were applying for loans who he knew didn't really qualify. But he cared so much about them and wanted so much to help them that he would approve them for loans. You know, the Talmud says, Yesh koneh olamo b'chama shanim, v'yesh koneh olamo b'sha'a achat. That some of us earn our place in the world to come over the course of our entire lifetimes, working day in and day out to do the right thing. And others earn our place in the world to come in a single moment, with a single act. I think Uncle Donald earned his place in the world to come 1,000 times over. I think just one of those loans, just one of those lives he changed by giving a stranger a second chance was enough to get Uncle Donald in. His work ethic and integrity were admired by everyone he worked with. And he was a role model for all the young whippersnappers, 40, 50 years his junior. But he had no patience for slackers. I'll never forget the story he told me, and I've told it to my own employees since. He said, if one of my employees comes in an hour late, I don't care. He probably had a flat tire. I get it. But if he comes in 5 minutes late holding a Starbucks, I know he didn't care enough to get to work on time, and he stopped for coffee anyway. That was a violation of Uncle Donald's code of ethics. You've heard about all of his businesses. He was driven. He was driven to make his parents proud, to provide for his family, to be a good husband, a good father, a good brother, a good uncle, a good pop-pop, and a good great-pop-pop. And he was. He was handsome, suave, and to me seemed sophisticated and worldly. Though he never cared much about things, he had a few luxuries that he loved. He always drove a Cadillac convertible and turned it over every couple of years for a new one. He wore those shimmery shark-skin suits. Remember that? He lived on his cabin cruiser on Lake Michigan. He smoked big fat cigars and carried a little silver cigar-cutting guillotine. Remember that? I love that. He was a big tipper, never ate leftovers, and insisted that his water glasses be put in plastic bags in the kitchen cupboard. What was that about? I'm really not sure, but it seemed kind of classy to me. He took life seriously, but he always had fun. He reminded us that we needed to enjoy life and to let things roll off our backs. Unless, like John said, it was a boy who we thought was gonna get fresh with us. And then he said, of course, I'm gonna break his kneecaps. And we knew he was joking. Kinda. We really, honestly, weren't quite sure. We weren't ever really all that sure that he wouldn't do it. Which made it the tiniest bit dangerous in the most exciting way. A Jewish guy who would break someone's kneecaps, that's cool. To have been born into the family that Uncle Donald called family was one of the greatest blessings of my life. He was exactly what an uncle is supposed to be. He was like your dad, but so much cooler. The person in whose eyes you are perfect. The person who loves you unconditionally. The one who always talks to you like you're an adult. The one who's fun, whose advice you actually take. Uncle Donald was there for me for every milestone of my life. From setting up my first checking account, and poor him, he covered every overdraft. I never knew how to keep that register thing. To helping me figure out how to buy my first car, to making sure that the insurance company declared it a total loss when I crashed that first car, to getting my first mortgage and my first home. He taught me how to cook an omelet, and taught me that I needed a dehumidifier for the basement, and he bought me one to be sure I had one. It was Uncle Donald who carved the turkey on Thanksgiving at our house, who made the most amazing macaroni and cheese with pepper. And we thought that was so gourmet. For the Hanukkah parties at his apartment on Lakeshore Drive. You've heard about the smoked fish, you've heard about the Sunday lox and bagels, so I won't go there. All the things we did on Sundays, I won't repeat it. I'll just add that we did go to Sweden House for the all-you-can-eat smorgasbord and the meatballs. So that was amazing. As he'd slow down to drop Barbara and me off at our house, he'd say, no, and he would step on the gas, go down to the corner, and do donuts in the intersection, around and around until we squealed with the leg. And we'd always return home from our Sunday adventures with treasures, souvenirs or small toys to remember the day. A rabbit's foot, a rainbow-colored pinwheel on a stick, a plastic race car helmet with plastic goggles. One day we even came home with bunnies, right? Peter Rabbit for me and Roberta Ann Benjamin Bunny for you. Parents usually remember their kids' first words, but we rarely remember the words we learned. Can you think of when and where you were when you learned any particular word? I do. It was the day that I came home with the plastic race car helmet with the goggles. And I excitedly showed it to my mother and I said, Uncle Donald bought this for me. And she said, your Uncle Donald is very generous. That was the day I learned the word generous. It had 3 syllables and it was very fancy and I loved the way it sounded and I could tell that it was a very good thing to be. Uncle Donald was generous. And as I grew up, this word, generous, the concept, generous, would be one that Uncle Donald, more than anyone in my life, would teach me about. Merriam-Webster defines generous as the warm-hearted readiness to give. Money, help, kindness, and to give freely, especially more than is usual or expected. I'm sure Uncle Donald didn't think about this definition of generous when he did what he did. To him, the impulse was just to take care of people. I'll take care of you, was practically his mantra. It was his constant reassurance to, I'll just bet pretty much every one of us, that we shouldn't worry, that he had our backs, that we could depend on him and he would be there for us, that he would do whatever he could to make our lives a little easier. The $5 bill he'd shove in our pocket, the $100 check that would come in the mail just in time for the phone bill. When I couldn't afford a jungle gym for Molly, a check for it appeared in my mailbox. In all of his businesses, he wanted to make money for sure, but not to be rich. He wanted to make money to take care of the people he loved. In the Talmud, Ben Zoma says, "Who is rich?" And he answers, "One who is happy with what he has." Uncle Donald was a very, very rich man. His Cadillac convertibles and few indulgences aside, his tastes were simple. That bowl of ice cream, the glass of seltzer, the apple pancake, the Salisbury steak at Elwood's, one of Barbara's brownies, or just spending time with his grandkids or sitting with his beloved Benny in his lap. That was all he wanted. I also want to take a moment to thank you, Eliza. On behalf of our entire family, we want you to know how grateful we all are to you for caring for Donald with so much love and devotion. He was so grateful to you, as we all are. Bobby, Marcia, Burton, Pat, there are no words that I can say to comfort you. All I can say is that our hearts break along with yours. Marcia, Uncle Donald loved you so dearly. You know that. He lit up when he held you on his arm. He was so proud to be seen with you. You loved him. You watched over him. You took care of him. You made his house a home. You traveled the world with him and expanded the family that he loved loving. You brought Hal and Kathy and Paula into his life. And getting 3 loving and devoted grandsons, and Jamie and Jeffrey and Chewy, and then Courtney and baby Nora, well, that was the greatest gift you ever could have given him. Bobby, I know you don't need me to tell you that you were the love of your father's life. You were the center of his world, his entire universe. He lived to see you happy. His greatest joy, I think, was to be able to give you whatever you needed, to help you in any way that he could. When you were happy, he was happy. And to spend time with you and Sammy and Ryan and Jack, to be included in what you were all doing, was his greatest thrill. Bobby, scarcely has there been a daughter more devoted to her father than you. Your father loved you with the most enormous love, and you returned it tenfold. You took care of him in a way that few children are able to do. You honored him by caring for his every need in the most tender, loving way. And you honored him by becoming the kind of loving, devoted parent to your kids that he was to you. When a parent loves you so much, it is natural to feel that no matter what you do for them, it's not enough. It can never be enough. The Jewish tradition understands this anxiety and reassures us A parent's love is not to be paid back. The Talmud says it can only be passed on. You honored your father by passing on your love to your children. But you've done both. You honored him not only in how you loved and cared for him, but how you've passed that love and devotion that he modeled for you unto your children, as you care for them as he cared for you. That's all he ever wanted. Uncle Donald was a happy man. So, the conclusion I've come to about what Uncle Donald meant to say to Murray 55 years ago, and to all of us listening, when he said, "He who knows and knows he knows is wise, follow him," is to make sure that those whom we love know that they are loved, and allow ourselves to be loved in return, and to know that we are loved, and to never forget it. Uncle Donald loved us all so much, and we knew it. And he knew that we knew it. And though our hearts are broken today, we take comfort in the fact that we loved Uncle Donald back, and he knew it. May we all be blessed to follow him in his wisdom and to live our lives as he lived his, full of unending love and generosity. Please rise, if you are able, for El Malei Rachamim. אל מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, חמצה מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים. את נשמת גדליה, בן יוסו ומלכה, שהלך לעולמו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירנו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Donald, Uncle Donald, Dad, Papa, Gedalia, Ben Yasu, Umalka, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life, and may he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Please be seated. The interment is going to take place at Shalom Memorial Park, located in Arlington Heights. We will have a funeral procession that will form in the parking lot. Please drive carefully with your high beam headlights on and your flashers on. We will flag your cars. After the interment, the families returning to Hale and Kathy Zabrin's residence at 419 West Foxdale Lane in Arlington Heights for the remainder of today until 8:30. That information is in the service pamphlets that we've handed out. The following have been asked to act as pallbearers. Jack Wiley, Ryan Wiley, Matthew Zabrin, Jeffrey Zabrin, James Zabrin, Hal Zabrin, Murray Lappy, and Jonathan Minkus. At this time, if everybody would please rise, other than the people that are in their chairs. And if the pallbearers would please come forward and escort the casket from the section.